Welcome to the new media show. We're back.
Doing the new media show again.
People are actually going to listen to this junk.
We do it live.
We're live right now.
We'll just do it live.
We're going live. We're going live.
We just can't get enough. The new media show.
Let's go.
Just do it live.
We're going live. We're going live. Bada bing, bada boom.
The new media show. We do it live.
Just do it live.
We're going live. We're going live. We're going live.
The new media show. I'm like Adam Curry and you're more like John C. Dvorak.
I think I am Adam Curry and you're the old curmudgeon.
We do it live. Doing the new media show again.
The new media show.
Technology.
Woo. We make it sound so special. Here we are, Rob, in another new media show for July 13th, 2022. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, it's great to be here, Todd. It's great to be back with the show again. It's always exciting to have New Media Wednesday, where we can talk about some of the hot issues in the podcasting space. And there certainly are a few to talk about today.
Just a few, but before we get going, I want to share our boost. We've had some boosts. We've had some Satoshi sent to the show.
Yeah,
and
some clips shared on Twitter too.
Yeah, and I have been slacking in talking about these. So if you've sent us boost in the past, we're doing a catch up. A catch up of boost to the show. And for those of you that don't know what a boost is a podcast 2.0 feature on podcast 2.0 apps that support sending us what they call boost. And for those of you watching the live stream, you can see a app called Heliopad, and it monitors the boosts that come into the show. And I'm running essentially my own node. I guess I don't know. Again, I'm running a Lightning node. So all this comes directly to my account. And I think it accounts for about $6, Rob. So don't get too excited here.
Ooh, I was getting excited there for a second.
Yeah. So we had 150 sats from James Cridlin. He says, thanks for the vacation wishes. We had 50 sats from a new video about the new video look for a new media show from Basaya Podcast. I love the new media show podcast. Rob and Todd give so much helpful information. I appreciate it. It's great to have something like this to listen to and learn from. Thank you for putting this together. We got another 50 sats. It says, it's the same, basically same notes. We got 100 total sats from them. Then we got 222 sats 2 weeks ago from Like him. He says, Todd, Rob, you have your ducks in a row. I'm adding another duck, sending 222 Satoshis. I earned 400 sats just listening to episode 500. So you can earn Satoshis by listening as well. On the, I'll remember here in a second. It starts with an F.
Is it Fountain?
Fountain. You can listen on Fountain. We got another 150 sats from James 2 weeks ago. Great to hear the two Dans. We've got 2,112 sats from Dave Jones. Here's a boost to show how non-interactive RSS is. Spotify can go pound sand. That was the message. And then 5,000 sats 3 weeks ago from Adam Curry. He says, boosting for gremlins. And another 2,222 sats from Adam Curry again on 15 April. This is going back. We solve transcripts. I use them to search in shows when I can't remember where something was said. And then we got 5,000 sats from Drev Scott back in April. Transcripts, I have a condition called delayed audio processing. There are many times I need the transcripts to help me process what I'm hearing. They're very helpful. Always watch TV with captions and add chapter images to transcripts, and my brain is fully engaged in the podcast. Now, this is a big one. We got 50,000 sats from Dreb. He says, throwing some sats your way to us earlier into my device, into my wallet. So, all of you wondering what in the carnation, and I'm saying carnation instead of another word. What in the carnation are you guys talking about? Go subscribe. If you are a podcaster, now we don't want you to leave this show.
Right.
But if you are a podcaster and you care about the open RSS podcasting space, you need to go listen to the Podcasting 2.0 board meetings once a week with Adam Curry and Dave Jones. Now, here's the skinny. I have not been boosting that show, but I've been listening, and I need to boost myself. I need to send some money over there to them. But they've been talking about a whole bunch of complicated issues, and I got to make sure we're still on YouTube. A whole bunch of complicated issues that, yeah, we may not be up on YouTube. So looks like we are. Something happened there. So anyway, it'll give you a little bit of a headache at times. But one of the things they were talking about, and I know some of the guys listen to the show, is that they have on the value for value model. If you are a podcast app, now how this works is when someone sends us money, there is a little bit of transaction fees go along, and because of the way this is set up, 1% goes back to Podcast 2.0.
Mm-hmm.
And again, don't ask me to explain all this. You guys will have to figure that out by listening to Dave and Adam. But the apps are trying to figure out how they are going to get their value for value as well. Because you think about what is Marco, and all those folks, they've got apps. How do they have a sustaining model?
From the Overcast app.
Right, Overcast, but Marco, again,
right.
Marco's app's not a Podcast 2.0 app, just to be clear. But those that are building Podcast 2.0 apps, how are they going to sustain themselves? And there's a big debate starting on episode 90. It rolled into 91, talked a little bit during 92, but in the end, I think the consensus is that the app developers should have their own mechanism, say, hey, help us out, support us. If you love what you're doing, boost us, or send us a donation, or whatever it may be.
Right.
Instead of taking it, now someone sends us 150 sats, we don't end up getting 150 sats. There's some that comes out. We see it as 150, but what goes in the wallet is not 150. And that's understood. But if all of a sudden someone sends us, let's say they send us 1,000 sats and we end up with 500, I'm going to be like, WTF over what's happened? Who took a big cut? And that's what we don't want to happen. We don't want the app developer say, okay, my percent's 10% or 20 or 5 or 4. My opinion is that the user, the listener of this show that's listening on a Podcast 2.0 app should say, I love this app. I love what they're doing. Let me throw them, whatever it may be, 5,000 Satoshis a week, a month, 100,000, whatever it is, whatever the number is. But again,
so what you're saying is that the person doing the donation needs to select how much of that donation goes to the app and how much it goes to the podcast. Is that what you're saying?
That was the big discussion,
Right.
because normally what happens now, if you we know if you're using PayPal, that they're going to take 4 or 5% out. If someone sends me $100, I know that it was going to be like $94.50 or something like that. That's going to be actually deposited. And in doing the value for value, I know that the way this is set up, that at least 1% is going to go back to Podcast 2.0. But the question then is how many people are going to start getting in the pie. So if somebody's on Fountain, and Fountain sends their percentage at whatever it may be, and again, don't Fountain, if you guys are listening, I'm not trying to point you out, but all of those groups will have to make a decision how to implement. And I've heard Fountains actually saying, hey, support us by adding on, or maybe a slider or something. So I think in the end, when I'm listening to Dave and Adam on episode 90, Adam is like big time saying, you gotta protect the creator, gotta protect the creator, and I'm on board with that. Because if someone sends you we got a check PayPal last year that was pretty big, and from a contributor to the show, and you and I split that, and that was a big donation. Now, if we'd have gotten a donation for $1,000 and 500 of it would have been took out because other people reached into the pot, not. I still would be appreciative of the money, but I would have been pissed that someone else got a big portion of what was destined for us.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so anyway, so if anyone is watching, and here's another thing too, there's this new tag. It's called Lit, and basically, and I'm going to work on figuring out how to get this set up, because here's the deal: I'm tied into PowerPress, and there's a guy out there that's making an add-on that ties into PowerPress. I need that Lit. I need that Lit tag. happy to make a big donation on that. Because what I want to do is what the Lit tag does is for those of us that live stream,
Mhm.
and in essence, the bat signal goes out. It says, we're lit, we're live. And it causes the apps then to those that support it to show our stream.
Mhm.
So that we can enable, and it doesn't mess with the podcast RSS 2.0 elements. It's a separate, I believe it's called an element in a feed. And again, if I get the language wrong, don't shoot me. But really what it does is sends a bat signal out. Here's how you can come get us. Here's where it's at. I'm assuming it's for both video and audio. And basically those apps then would flip and you'd get a notification if you're following the show on those apps, say, hey, New Media Show's live.
Yeah, so it's not inventing anything to the RSS. It's just utilizing one of the tags.
Yeah,
right?
well, it's utilizing no, it's not a tag, because a tag is embedded in a RSS 2.0 element. It's an actual separate element in the feed. So basically, it can show, and there's some sort of reckoning of how that is done, and some sort of ping. And don't get me started on it, because I'm not completely up to speed. But you got to go, if you care about any of this, which I hope you do, you need to go listen to the Podcasting 2.0 board meeting they have every Friday. And it's a 2-hour program. The only thing I say is that's a long one. After listening to after listening to some other shows, I'm like trying to squeeze this one in, so... and they have a donation value for value contribution piece in there as well. So, I talked to my team this morning extensively about it, saying, hey, a few of you devs, please go over and listen to this thing, because some of the stuff they're talking about I understand the gist.
Well, it's their concept, right? And we're just not
well, you don't have
privy to all the details.
Well, you don't have to be a dev to understand the discussion.
Right.
But I want my team to be more proactive in listening and having input to this. But anyway, just like this, this helipad, it's run on a software package called Umbrel, UMBREL, on a Pix Pi computer, whatever it's called, and so I can monitor what's coming into the show. So I should, if someone boosts this show while we're live, I should be able to see it come in right here on the screen. So, but that leads into the same old beep that it keeps being talked about by the same beeping people.
Right, about RSS.
About RSS.
Yeah. There's no innovation being pursued in RSS.
None.
That's the contention.
None.
Yeah. So Mike Mignano, who's the founder,
Anchor.
Yeah, who's the founder of Anchor, who I have to say I've spoken to Mike in the past. Actually, I met him at a Podcast Movement meetup. This was a few years ago in New York, and we talked for a long time. And he came from kind of the music business, is where he came from originally. So he's coming at this kind of from a music perspective. So you can kind of see the merger that happened between Anchor and Spotify made a lot of sense to him, and it obviously was if you read the article that he wrote, that was the headline article in Pod News today, the kind of James kind of took it and ran with the headline, "Is RSS hindering podcasting?" Was the headline for this, and really the summary of what Mike's article is really all about is talking about the standards. He uses this term, it's like the standards paradox, right? That causes stagnation in the innovation side of platforms or software, right? So you have a standard that everybody adheres to, and it's almost like you have to do it, right? Also, you can't easily deploy something that you're trying to deploy if it's a new listening app or something like that. And it creates this dilemma that it's so much easier to just support a standard than it is to go and create something new, right? So that's the paradox that he's talking about, right?
Well,
and it creates this hesitation in trying to do anything new or what he thinks is some sort of innovation in the podcasting space. So he's linked up the fact that RSS hasn't, as a standard, hasn't been changed since it was created.
Well, he's wrong.
Well, he's wrong from the perspective it's been extended, right?
Right, it's been extended
through namespaces, but the origin of the standard hasn't been changed. It's still core RSS 2.0,
Right.
which was the base standard. And the last time that was worked on from a standards group standpoint was 20 years ago.
He's wrong, though.
I agree. Apple has put new tags on top of RSS. It can be extended. Right.
Podcast 2.0 has. Others have.
Correct.
Google has.
Correct.
So
in a lot of ways, it's not accurate for him to portray that this RSS 2.0 standard has not been improved or developed upon.
If you tell
just
people
that premise alone, it is not really accurate.
If you tell people something long enough, they believe it.
Right.
And because you have this mass of anchor podcasters that largely, I gotta be careful, don't care. They just putting their show out.
Yeah, it's primarily a non-technical group
And
of content creators.
And
that's kind of what we're doing.
For listeners, they don't care.
Right.
They don't care how they consume the content. They don't care about RSS. The thing is, Spotify is able to do whatever the heck they want within their ecosphere. They can bring all these new features. Right. The matter of fact, my prediction is, along with a few other people, I believe Anchor's days are numbered, because what they're going to do is they're going to roll Anchor stuff into Spotify, and they're going to get rid of Anchor. That's my prediction. Anchor
is probably not going to be a separate brand, right?
No. It's Anchor is an entity. I would predict within 12 months will be gone, and that everything that wasn't.
You certainly don't see them promoting the brand Anchor at any podcasting conferences.
No, not at all. Right. So my guess is Anchor will be gone in a year, as you know it. People will be migrated into Spotify. Right. And because they want 500,000 new publishers. Well, good luck with that one. Good luck. I agree with some other, again, another topic that was covered. I don't want to sound like broken record, but go listen to the podcast 2.0. Good luck with that. And having 500, whatever their number was, million, whatever the number was of creators. Go ahead. Good luck with that and monetizing that. Good luck.
Right. Well, I mean, Mike's point was really, the whole huge article that he wrote was really a justification in his mind for Spotify and Anchor to break the compliance with RSS.
Well, I fully expect them to.
Yeah, I mean, they've been putting out comments and things about how they're moving away from RSS. So go ahead.
I would not be surprised within not this year, not within 12 months, but I would not be surprised within 36 months that you cannot have your show distributed into Spotify with an RSS feed anymore. That's my prediction. My prediction is if you want to be in there, you're going to have to go in there and publish separately. That's my prediction.
And also, it may happen sooner that if you upload a podcast to Spotify, you won't even be given the option to have an RSS feed.
Right. Well, that's already default at Anchor. Remember, they turned off. You don't get an RSS feed at Anchor unless you turn it on.
Yeah, I just think eventually they'll just completely remove that capability altogether.
So they're going to do what they're going to do, knock themselves out, and you know, we'll see where the chips fall on this. But in reality, they could have everything they want and more if they started supporting some of the stuff that's being done already to extend the space.
Yeah, that could be applied to a lot of
players,
companies in the podcasting space too. So I mean, you and I have been beating this drum for I don't know how many years now that this should happen. I mean, we kind of saw it happen with the IAB, with the podcast metrics, where we got the industry together and we kind of came up with some new ideas around how to count downloads. That's been relatively successful. I'm not sure why that couldn't be done with podcasting.
A subset of
the applying some RSS.
Because here's why a company like Spotify, Pandora, Amazon, and others will never support what's being done on Podcast 2.0.
Well, it can't come from them.
And it's not financially advantageous for them to do that.
Right.
It's
yeah. Right.
They lose
that's the real motivation.
And they lose control.
Right.
They have less control over creators when creators can tell their audience, hey, you want to support the show? Listen to this on Fountain or Curiocaster. Listen to this show. And if you love what we're doing here, throw us some Satoshis or send me a donation in PayPal or whatever it may be. Send me here's my Cash App link. I think what we have to protect here again, and I think sometimes people wrinkle their nose when they hear us say this, but you and I go back and there's some stuff I've said and said and said and said and said and said and said. And oftentimes we're scoffed for years, scoffed at. And then, oh, you were right. And now we're telling content creators, we have to maintain and protect and expand RSS as it exists today in order to remain free and open and accessible and no gatekeepers. And, how many times have we said this on this show?
But that's the real motivation behind this article, is to say it's time for us to break away and for us to establish our own innovation, and RSS is just holding us back from that.
They can Pax hand.
So that's what's really, really going on here. And that's, they have every right to do it. I'm not saying that they don't have every right to do it. They can. If that's what they feel like they need to do. Just, really the analogy I like to play here is what YouTube did to video podcasting, right?
Now,
it basically, and that's also happening at Spotify here too, where they want to compete directly with YouTube. So,
oh boy, I got all kinds of armor today. It's amazing what happens when you listen to podcast. Remember how we were talking about this quote unquote mass discovery of podcasts on YouTube?
Yeah.
Dave Jones did a little experiment. He went through and looked at the top 50, and he did 1-for-1 comparisons. down the list, and it took him to he got to 20 before he found a single show that actually had a YouTube equivalent. And they were more YouTubers to begin with, podcasters. Not saying that people aren't discovering podcasts on YouTube, but I will stand by my commitment.
It's more about perception, right? They're perceiving all those shows on YouTube to be podcasts.
That's right.
But they're really not podcasts.
Some are.
Well, yeah, some are, but it's a percentage of the total pool. So the consumers of content are confusing this, right? They're confusing a show that's on YouTube with a show that's a podcast available on Apple Podcasts.
I think so.
Yeah. So
now Tom's going to say, nope. That's not true.
It's not even that it's not true. It's just in the mind of consumers of online content, they don't care the distinction.
Yeah,
but
you're right.
We as an industry care about the distinction.
And you have a lot of podcasters now, so I gotta be on YouTube. I gotta be on YouTube. If I'm not on YouTube, I'm not gonna grow.
Right.
I'm looking at my YouTube channel. Yeah. I'm like, okay.
Right. I mean, we're trying here. We're trying to make our show
we're trying
more YouTube and video friendly, and see how that moves the needle. Does it move the needle? Does it move it?
So it's just but coming back to it's just like every once in a while they're continue. So now what I'm going to have to do, I'm going to have to go out to my PR team and say, I'm going to write a piece on open RSS, and please let's get that out there and pitch it. And I'll be honest with you, if any of you want to contribute to that, I'm happy to take your quotes and your comments. I have Blueberry has a PR team. I'll hand it to my PR rep, and she'll ship it to all these journalists, and we're happy to go out there and boom, 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 the open RSS standard.
Right.
I'm just it's an unneeded distraction.
Yeah, and don't be confused by the kind of message that's in this article about the context of this whole discussion, because it's being portrayed in a way that jumps to a conclusion, and it really doesn't have a rationale that's really based in fact, in what's actually happening. It's to paint in a pathway that Spotify wants to head down.
It's setting a storyline.
Right.
And believe me, anytime Todd, Rob, Blueberry, Libsyn, Spotify, Amazon, anytime we put anything out, we have an agenda.
Right.
We have an agenda. What is Blueberry's agenda? Blueberry's agenda is to get you, the potential new podcaster or the existing podcaster, to come over and host with us. That's the agenda. Rob and Libsyn and Advertise and all the agenda is host with them.
Right. And I don't believe that we try and hide behind that. I think we're forward and outward about it. And saying this about Spotify is not really in any kind of a defense. They can run off and do whatever they want to do.
Right.
Open RSS will exist without Spotify if Spotify wants to leave it.
Yeah, it's true.
So, I mean, it'll have an impact, and it'll create more confusion in the market because more and more people will think if they're publishing their podcast directly to Spotify that they're a podcast, but that's only because Spotify wants to put out a mixed signal about what this really is and how it works.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of listeners don't care. Okay, a lot of listeners don't care. That's okay too. I know back when I worked at Spreaker, there was a lot more shows that were published just to Spreaker, and that was okay. Not all of them were podcasts, but maybe now in the environment that we're in now, maybe all those shows and all the shows that are published just to Spotify are now seen as podcasts, even though they're technically, by the old definition of what a podcast is, no longer a podcast. So,
yeah. I'm at a point where it's just like, okay, here we go again, right?
You're right.
It's,
Well, even
it's
you're around as long as we have. We've seen this topic. The death of podcasting.
RSS is not great enough. It's not good enough. Yeah.
Nobody's innovating with it, and it's yeah. I mean, the other thing that you would take away from this article is that somehow RSS has caused podcasting to not grow or to be stagnant or something like that. This guy built a huge business that he sold to Spotify on the back of RSS.
Yeah.
So, how he can claim that it wasn't an opportunity, RSS wasn't an opportunity for him, is a little bit hypocritical.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, I got this a couple of weeks ago on Twitter, and it was buried.
Okay.
Because I didn't follow the person at the time. I am now. It was from Fathom.fm. Said, "Hey Todd, Paul here. I listened to your recent podcast and answer your question. Yes, a person can easily follow a podcast and listen to a complete podcast episode. Every part of our app, including search. Search allows users to explore the collective knowledge intelligence that is locked inside a podcast. As a listener, how do I find a conversation that answers my specific question? Fathom AI makes it possible. If you have any other questions, I'm happy to answer them." I don't know why I wanted to throw that in here, but just wanted to, I remember it came in.
Yeah. I think I saw that tweet too. I think I was copied on it as well.
And I want to thank Chris as well for some comments he made on some stuff we just released. So,
yeah, and James and Martin Lindskog also has been posting about us too, and giving great feedback on listening to the show, and folks have been posting clips from the show on things that we've said, and we definitely appreciate all that.
So we got a tweet that came in a little while ago from Mojam. And he said, "Would love to hear you guys' thoughts on today's pod news reporting it sound profitable. Thinks programmatic is a huge boon for all of podcasting, while at the same time mentioning the comment from Marco Armet saying," and Marco had put a tweet out, said, "Cheap, sloppy dynamic ad insertion in podcasts continues to degrade the experience for listeners. They blame the app, and that's my problem to deal with. But DIY podcasters, what are you doing? You're throwing your audience away. These people leave podcasting forever." And some of the stuff that's come in to Marco, he says, "I really like the way the app works, but lately been adding on advertising to all my podcasts. They have to make money, but I have a real hate for gambling ads. And then now I have to start getting those. We'll probably switch back to an app that does not have the extra ads. Again, it's not Marco's fault. Marco's fault." Another comment, "I've used this app for years. It works well and has a few little bugs, but overall it's quite good. They recently added random ads are quite frequent and quite annoying. I understand they need to monetize, but going from no ads to tons per podcasting is frustrating. Update." The developer responds stating that they do not add ads into podcasts. They say the ads are already there. "I find this curious because the ads I'm referring to are different than the podcasters and are geo-specific and seem to change based on my location. If it's not the app, it's one heck of a coincidence. Still love the app." It's true. Well, listeners don't understand programmatic. Here's another person. Their ads for other podcasters are so loud, I blew out my eardrum and had to visit the doctor. You better believe I'll be speaking with my lawyer as well. Don't download it unless you want ear problems. What else? Boy, it just goes on. So Marco's getting blasted for crappy.
Well, he's getting blamed because his content's coming through his app, but it's probably not being created by his app. It's being created by the podcasters and the hosting platforms, not getting their act together too much. I know that some of the platforms are doing auto sensing of insertion points. And I think the automation side of this is where I think it's a little bit of a slippery slope, right?
Well, knock on wood.
Right.
Here's my thought. I've been testing programmatic on my personal show for about 3 months.
Yeah.
And I've asked my very verbal audience to send me feedback when they hear something they don't like, if it's too loud, but also my show is already mastered at the right audio level to begin with.
Right, but there's no mastering of the ads prior to insertion.
Yes, there is. If you have worked with your DAI inserter, you will have a matched LUFS.
Oh, you will? Okay.
But
awesome.
You have to have that conversation.
Right.
To make sure they understand that you don't want, a typical television ad that comes in, 3 decibels or 5 decibels higher. Now, I'm not going to say it's not going to happen. Knock on wood, let's hope it doesn't, because I will be the first one getting blasted in the face.
Right.
But some DAI is pretty bad. Now, DI is digital audio insertion. So
sometimes this stuff's done on purpose. So just like it's done that way in television.
Right.
So
here's, and I've said this many times on this show in the last year. 5 years ago, I didn't think programmatic would make it. I think now is the time programmatic will be good for the average podcaster because CPMs have come up to a decent, not great level.
Right. Right. I mean, it's getting up close to baked in, but
I would say about half of baked in. On it. Well, 5 to 15 is what we're seeing.
Right. Right.
So, and again, they're geographic specific. Matter of fact, we had a conversation because we'll be announcing soon that I talked with the provider and I said, hey, a Spanish ad was running my show out in California. And he said, give me the name of the advertiser, we'll block them. Because what happens is near the end of the month, some folks have inventory left over.
Mm-hmm.
So their audio partner, the one that's providing, they will flip the switch on that ad and say it's English when it's Spanish. And that's a bad character. That's a bad partner from the delivery side. So I provided the sample of the clip. They went back and they blocked that particular advertiser because they were just trying to fill inventory at the end of the month.
And they figured nobody would notice.
No one would notice. And yet Todd's listeners are like, send me everything it's not right.
Right.
Or something that makes your eyeballs get big. I'm at this point pro-programmatic. Not just because we're going to be introducing it as a business part of Blueberry. I'm pro-programmatic because I haven't been able to get host-endorsed ad deals back into small shows.
Right.
And I
agree with you.
And some podcasters want money in their pockets. Not all. And if you don't run it.
Well, when programmatic started, quite a few years ago now, those CPMs were hardly worth the effort, right?
They were bad.
Right.
Bad.
And that's where my hesitation came from in really endorsing programmatic as a solution here. Was that, it didn't make any sense to promote campaigns that would pay the podcaster, less than $1 per 1,000 listeners, So, but now that things have changed on that, right? The ads are getting a little better. The CPMs are definitely getting a lot better. It starts to make more sense, right? The podcaster can actually make some money at this, where before that just wasn't the case. So I wasn't a huge fan of programmatic, but I could certainly see the advantage of the dynamic insertion aspects of it. But these other business elements and content elements were kind of always holding me back.
So it's just like this show. We're not running any advertising on the show. If you find value, if we're giving value to you, you throw your own number on it. You go over to newmediashow.com and we've got a donation link on the website. If you feel we're giving you value,
right,
$2, $5, $10, $100, $1,000, whatever you think our value is, I'm not going to ask for a cup of coffee because I barely drink coffee. So maybe a Mountain Dew at Speedway's $2.49. So keep that in mind.
Well, Todd, I do drink coffee, so I'll be happy to take a cup of coffee.
Well, okay. So you get
mocha.
Get your 50.
Or a mocha, actually.
Well, you're probably getting it from Starbucks, so that's $6 or $7. So Rob needs more money.
Here. I make it at home. I don't go to Starbucks. It's too expensive to go to Starbucks.
Okay, so okay, I just we're trying to give credit here where credit's due. Let me go back and make sure we also Brian Barletta made a comment about us talking about the Sounds Profitable creators presentation. So thanks for that mention, Brian. Let's see here, who else? I got to go back here.
Well, it Sounds Profitable has a workshop that they're putting on at Podcast Movement coming up here. So I don't know if there's still open slots for that, but yeah.
And thanks, Martin, for the shout out on Twitter as well on the clip, the mention that we got on Podcast 2.0. So, to be honest with you, Martin, you are the reason I kind of get kicked in the butt to start listening to that show again. So your tweet was the one that prompted me to do that.
Yep.
What else? I'm going back here. Anyway, so I think that what we just have to keep the fight on. And if you are a podcaster doing a podcast about podcasts, or know a podcast that's doing a podcast about podcasts, and they're not talking about this, you need to ask them why. You need to ask them why they're not talking about open RSS and making podcasters understand that this is not a stagnant specification. From RS 2.0 it is, but we're extending it. And when I say we, I mean we, the podcasters, are extending it. And those that are enthusiasts are trying to extend it and make it more beneficial for everybody.
Right. So that paints a good contrast, I think, Todd, to what's being what the rhetoric is versus what the reality is.
Right.
What the rhetoric is not constructive.
Right.
What the rhetoric is playing to an agenda. What we're talking about here is the industry kind of coming together and working together. Because I don't know about you, but I didn't really see Spotify raise their hand and say, well, I want to get involved in a standards group, or I want to get involved in helping push forward improvements to RSS.
But guess who did show up to one of our standards groups? Apple showed up.
Apple showed up, and Pandora, and there were lots of people that were there from big platforms that are willing to talk. It's just, there's just no forum other than Podcast 2.0 that exists to talk about this.
So,
stuff.
And here's the thing, Dave and Adam, you guys need to put the word out that you'd like to have a conversation. And Podcast Movement is a great place to have that, and where you bring the creators together and these companies and just talk a little. Maybe you don't want to, you don't have time, maybe you don't have time for them, but I think, let's be frank, how are we going to get lit all the way through the Ecospace? How are we going to get all these other things throughout the entire Ecospace? Maybe you guys don't care. I would like to see all the apps support lit and everything else that's going on, because I think that we're in a hybrid space now where a lot of people are doing, it's not for everybody, but if you're doing live, wouldn't it be cool? Would it not be cool?
Well, more and more shows are doing live because of the capabilities of Riverside and StreamYard. And
so we announced this is coming live. It's on Facebook. It's on YouTube Live. It's on Twitter. But what if your favorite podcast app, ding, New Media Show is live. Click on the button, and guess what? Todd and Rob are right there in front of you.
Right.
And you can engage. That's the shit.
Well, Todd, the plan is for us to have a live show at Podcast Movement coming up here at the end of August, on August 26th, from 11:30 a.m. to 12:45 p.m. That's Central Standard Time in Dallas. And I hope to have this be one of the primary topics. And so maybe it makes sense to get Dave or Adam to join us on stage at that, to talk about this stuff and start to really kind of form some sort of a understanding in the industry that, these points that Michael are making about RSS isn't the final word
No,
on this.
both of them are going to be there.
Right.
I know both Dave and Adam are making the trip to Dallas, and they're actually sharing a room together. So,
Okay.
So
well, they're close. They're both in Austin, right?
Dave is Adam is no longer in Austin. He's in
he is.
Hill Country, a couple hours, I believe, away from Austin.
Got it.
But still, it's they're. I don't know if they do their show in the same studio or not, but it sure the heck sounds like it. Matter of fact, Adam is praising the Roadcaster. I'm calling it the Roadcaster 2.
Yeah. Did you get one, Todd, or are you still using?
No, I haven't bought one yet. But I keep hearing all these exciting things about it. I'm like, my wallet's itching in my pocket. I don't need it.
Right. I
don't need it, but it's, need and want are two different things, right? So someone make a big donation to the show and buy Rob and I one. That would be that would be value for value.
Right. But yeah, I mean, I've already invited James Cridlin to join us. Okay. On stage, so I think he's a big proponent of open RSS as well. So, and I think that's what we want to preserve, is because I do think that closed walled garden proprietary platforms are coming to podcasting more and more. I think it's an inevitable. Excuse me. It's an inevitable direction. Based on what we're hearing from Spotify, and I think it could be an element of what we see happen at YouTube as well. So we shall see.
Kind of scary.
Well, I think the history of the medium is that all comers and all ideas are welcome, which is an interesting contrast to Michael's point. Is that I think the medium is big enough and strong enough to withstand a couple of proprietary platforms if they want to play in this medium. I think we've had Apple, who's had a pretty strong hand over podcasting for many years, and it's still worked out fine. So, I don't know, Todd, what's your thought on that? I mean, so let's say Spotify chooses to dump RSS. And they want people to upload directly to their platform, and they basically are creating an exclusive, YouTube, a podcasting type of platform.
Good luck.
Do you think that's still good for podcasting?
I think it's I've got an axe here by a fire hydrant. I think you take that axe off the wall, and I think and Spotify's investors are already freaking out. They're already not happy with the performance. So they go do this and add 500 million creators to their platform.
Are they going to take down all the ones they have right now that are based on RSS?
Well, can you imagine the absolute caca that will be in that platform? You won't be able to support you. First of all, right. They're gonna have to moderate all of it.
That's happened already to them, right?
They're gonna have to moderate it all, and good luck. This is good luck with that, and good luck monetizing the platform. You're going to drop an ad. You're going to drop a Ford ad. That is supposedly on a brand safe show, and the guy says something offhand that is, not doesn't get picked up by the transcription program.
It's going to be moderated. It's going to be moderated heavily, right?
Well, we'll see, but it's like all it takes is, and then hurting. It cannot be host read. You can't do that. It's got to all be programmatic, and you run some ads like they've run in the past, and all of a sudden advertise. Maybe it'll work. Maybe they got the tech, but they're not. Good luck herding those cats.
Yeah, I think that they can do whatever they want to do, just like YouTube can do whatever they want to do. But that doesn't automatically equate that everybody's going to embrace it.
As a podcaster, podcast business owner, I don't know what to think. I would I know what I think.
Well, Todd,
See ya.
it could create an environment where you as a podcaster need to upload directly to Spotify in order to get into Spotify, right?
Oh, I fully
I mean, you
expect.
may not be able to do that through publishing through Blueberry or
Right.
Libsyn in
Right.
the future, is what I'm saying. So you need to be willing to publish your show twice.
Just think
instead
about
of
all,
once.
just think about all the podcasters that are on there that are getting a little of exposure, and then all of a sudden they open this funnel to all this what will invariably be crap. And how do you sort out from the weeds? How do you get? I good luck. That's all I can say. It's maybe they got the money. Maybe they don't run out of money first.
Well, if they have the ambition to compete directly with, because I think TikTok, right? TikTok and Spotify, I think, want to compete with YouTube, right? So they seem to be pushing in that direction more and more.
That's a big hill to climb. TikTok has a better chance. TikTok's already conquered Shorts. No one's doing Shorts better than TikTok. So,
right.
I think it's apples and oranges. But again, do they have the runway of money left? Think about what's coming. We had 9.1% CPI today in the United States.
Yeah, right. I saw that. Yeah.
Okay, so we are headed for
to
a cliff.
Recession. Right.
And how much of a drawback in spend will advertisers have when this happens?
We don't know that yet. Right.
We don't. Now, what we saw, what was that? What we saw the last recession was the advertising spend didn't retract too much, but it didn't grow, but the content kept coming because everyone was doing their shows out of their studios. There wasn't big production companies. There wasn't a need for big budgets. So if the advertising space contracts, even let's say 15%, there's going to be a lot of podcast production groups that are going to be out of business. They are not going to be able to afford to do their content. But those that will survive and those that will continue to shine are those that are independent content creators that have low overhead and the ability to create content on their own, regardless if you have an advertiser or not. And during a recession, throw a brother a dime becomes more important than having an advertiser. So if your show is advertiser dependent, I would be on an absolute freak out mode. What's going to happen over the next 6 months? And if you work for a company that relies on that advertising as its sole revenue piece,
right,
it could be rough times ahead.
Yeah,
maybe.
Yeah, we'll see on that to see if
we'll see.
I think if you look at the history of podcast advertising, it's actually rode through recessions fairly unscathed.
But Rob, there's a big difference between 2008 and 2022. We've been on a long run here.
We have.
14 plus years. Or how long did it take us to get out of the recession in 2008? A couple of years?
Oh, probably. Well, it depends on what part of what part of the economy you're talking about.
But still, it was like, so there are much bigger stakes because companies are much, much bigger. And, we're already seeing, like, I just see it locally as an example. I was out last night and 4 or 5 people were worried. They said all the orders have dried up coming into their company, and their raises that they were expecting to get this month have been put on hold, and they're afraid they're going to start laying people off because orders have dropped off. So if I'm seeing that in my small town that supports the auto industry,
right,
then
the audio the auto industry is in trouble. So just put it that way.
So anyway,
yeah.
we'll see.
Yeah.
But the stakes are much bigger because there's so much bigger money. And when it comes to Spotify, they're beholden to deliver, earning performance of some sort. And if this investment they made, if the advertising dries up, they're screwed. They are screwed.
Well, Spotify has been shifting more and more. If you're talking specifically about Spotify, their business model has been shifting more and more towards subscription.
Well, guess what?
When there's going to be dropped off on that.
When people's budgets, so what do? You buy gas for your car, you have your Spotify subscription. Very simple. You cancel your Spotify subscription.
Yeah, and here recently we've seen, over the last couple of years, we've seen a real shift from people having Netflix subscriptions,
right,
and moving over and having subscriptions with specific studios, right? That there could be some serious pullback on that too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we may see the subscriptions go back to Netflix again.
So time will tell on this. I think if you're an independent content creator and you are,
when you've kept your costs down,
you're going to be fine.
Mm-hmm.
And your show is important to your ongoing future, especially if there's drawback. A lot of this stuff that's in production, it's high value, that is expensive to produce. You might be right in a position to come out of this thing smelling like a rose. I'm convinced. When I heard that number this morning, I actually was like, wow. And I'm not an economist.
Yeah.
But I know what it costs to put gas, groceries, all this other stuff, and it's shocking. So,
and that's an average number too, right? It's not even
right.
purely reflective.
On different range of there's a range of different products.
Right.
That brings me to a whole another topic.
The costs of podcast conference sponsorships, right?
Yeah. So I've sent a couple of you, if you listen, and you may not be listening, but I've sent a couple of you emails.
Yeah.
And it's a simple mathematical equation. If it costs me $8,000 to come to your event, to be a sponsor, and at a minimum, $8,000 spend to have a table and get some social media mentions and on your banner, and you only have 300 people at your event, that don't work. Because if you just do the math. Now, yes, okay, so let's look at this multiple ways. Now let me open up my little calculator here, because again, it's not complicated, but let's just use a number, $8,000. And let's say there's going to be 300 people attending your event. That's your prediction. For me to come to your event, it's going to cost me $26 potentially a head to reach those folks. And they'll probably already know about me, but it's a minimum $26 to reach your attendees. Now, let's say that I value your event to give to support, wave the flag, say that I'm there. Let's say 75%. I know that the money is going to supporting your event, again, being there, showing I'm supporting. So let's reduce that number. Let's reduce that number, that $26 by 75%. And we're gonna whack off $19. Let's say $20. Mm-hmm. So it's still $6.50. If I'm looking then to get a little ROI out of your event, it's still $6.50 to reach each of the people that is going to be at your event. I don't care about the social. I don't care about the remote people. We've known that performance is junk. It's value zero. And the $6.50, and then I maybe will convert. So let's say there's 300, and let's say if I'm lucky and I convert 10%.
Yeah.
that's a hard sell. That's a hard sell from an ROI standpoint. Even though I've already accounted for 75% of it, it's just there to support and wave the flag and have our banner and have the name on the website.
Mm-hmm.
That's still a lot of money.
Yeah.
So the cheapest I could do this one event was $3,000. That was the cheapest. That was the cheapest level of what was available. And I couldn't attend. I couldn't have a table.
So you couldn't attend?
I would have had to have bought a ticket.
In addition
To the sponsorship.
Wow.
And I'm not going to walk into your event carrying flyers because that's really not allowed. So you have to, if you're a small event, don't build your event venue in an essence that where you need $100,000 to put on the event.
Yeah.
If you're going to have a regional event and you're expecting 300 people, then get a hall.
Scale it to that.
Scale it to that. And then let's say your expenses are 10 grand, coffee, water, juice, tables, whatever the venue is going to cost you to set up for 300 people, and a little bit on the hallway. So let's say your cost is 20,000. Then you can come to Rob, me, Podbean, all the hosts, get a couple $1,000s out of each of us. And we're happy to come and support, and we'd be there and hobnob and give us a little table. It doesn't have to be very big.
Mm-hmm.
That I can support.
Right.
But don't ask me to do a Spotify budget sponsor of your event that's only going to have 300 people.
Right.
I don't want to be an asshole. I want to support, but I can't. There has to be some ROI for me. I think the event organizers think, and I'm not whining, and the other companies that can support it, great. But I'm just looking at, I'm not that big of a company. We have 20 people. We're not rolling in bajillions of dollars. That's not us. I have a limited budget every year. Libsyn's budget is probably a lot bigger, but I know you guys got a budget for events. So
especially now after the pandemic, we've evaluated a lot of the same things like you're saying, Todd, and tried to figure out where the ROI is on this stuff more than we were probably prior.
Right.
So
now, if I had startup money and someone had given me, $36 million to blow, we're going to do it up. We're going to do it up every event because we got to burn that money up in 3 years. So I don't want to whine, but I'm just saying that your prices are too high, but your prices are too high.
Right.
And don't have an event where you have, I would say anyone that's having an event under 500 people, you really need to be careful on the venue selection that you're picking, and especially if it's going to be a multiple day event.
And who you're attracting to the event too is important. We've learned that, as well, is that.
And
there was have a lot of people. There was not the right people. It's not going to ROI either.
Right. There was the name of the event. One of the events I was looking at, I thought it was a fan thing, and they came in. Oh no, this is like a podfest. And I was like, oh, didn't realize that. Maybe you should do a name change to your event. And the thing is, some of these events I want to be able to write checks for, but you're right. I have to. And I know then there's probably 99.9% of you out there that don't care about this because you're not doing events. But if you're going to do an event and it's small, you got to have realistic budgets. For what do you think, Rob, for a 300 person event? What would be the top line? You have 4 or 5 levels of sponsors. What would you think an appropriate number would be for a 300
Well, I think
person?
about things that I've supported in the past and we're kind of pretty hard and fast about it. I think a 300 person event is probably maxed out at maybe $2,000 sponsorship, maxed out.
But what if you're the key line? If you're the key sponsor of that event, what would you pay?
Not that much more than that.
Right. I would go so far as to say that if you are the headline sponsor for 300 people, $4,000 to $5,000 is really top.
Yeah.
Top. I mean, top.
And you got to get a lot for that.
Right. A lot.
As far as, you shouldn't have to pay for your own ticket to get into the event, because being a sponsor and attending the event costs the sponsor money.
That's right.
It shouldn't cost them more money to pay for the ticket as well.
Right.
So, yeah.
And, and I understand event spaces are expensive. This is why if you have a small event, you have to pick an appropriate location to be at.
Right. And I think more and more sponsorship comes with a certain amount of opportunity to present and speak to that group as well. Right.
Well, and here's the thing. I've seen a whole bunch of these in the last month, and every one of them is pay to play. If you have this, you get a guaranteed spot to speak. And okay,
that's
think
important to have too, to make it ROI.
But if you're going to do that, it should be very strictly laid out in your sponsorship that it's not a pitch session.
Right. It's an educational session.
And if I look through a sponsor package and I see that the top 3 or 4 sponsors are guaranteed speaking spots, and that there is no clause about not pitching, I don't want to support the lower stuff. Because what happens is then those 3 or 4 people are going to be on the stage pitching their product or services and not educating and lowering the value of my contribution to your event. A mention, hey, I'm so-and-so with so-and-so. We've got great services, but here's what we're here to talk about. And
Todd, I agree with it. I got a question for you, Todd, kind of in a similar vein here that I noticed at Podcast Movement, and just to let people know, Dan Franks is going to be joining us next Wednesday on the show to talk about Podcast Movement Dallas. So he's going to be Skyping in. But what I did notice, and this isn't necessarily a criticism of Podcast Movement, but I just wanted to get your reaction, and I'll give you my reaction too. I did notice that there's a session that's focused on talking about how independent podcasters can compete against the pros. That's kind of the session title. And it's the panel is 3 Buzzsprout folks, and it's almost a 2-hour session, and it's on Friday late afternoon on the 26th. I was just curious what you thought about that. It doesn't appear to be a sponsored session.
Disclaimer: I'm speaking at Podcast Movement, but I'm not a sponsor of Podcast Movement. We have a booth there, but I am not going to have a session that is going to include any pitching, promotion whatsoever for Blueberry Podcasting. Right. Matter of fact, presentation, I talk about a whole bunch of companies.
Right.
But
do you think it's okay for Podcast Movement to have a session that has all Buzzsprout, basically, employees up there, and it not be promoted as a sponsored session?
Dan has my understanding is everyone that's speaking at Podcast Movement has signed a strict non-pitch agreement.
I'm just wondering, because if it's possible to have a session at Podcast Movement where the whole panel is from one company, that to me is a bad perception thing. I agree with you, Todd, that if and this is probably exactly what they're doing, they're going to be talking about giving tips and ideas about how independent podcasters can up their game with their shows, right, to compete against the big guys, and that's valuable. I'm not saying what they would be talking about there wouldn't be valuable. I just wasn't under the impression that it was okay for us to do like a session that has all of the Blueberry
I would
staff.
personally feel very uncomfortable in doing that. I would be very uncomfortable in doing that personally.
Yeah.
So to me, it just like invariably something is going to be said. I'm not here to prejudge, but it in my opinion, Dan, that's not a good look.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't even known because you went through the menu. Obviously, you went through the agenda and looked at different people that were speaking. I've been
doing that, trying to come up with guests for our show.
I'll give the benefit of the doubt because
Right.
I know that Dan has had a very strict policy on this, and someone that does pitch during
Right.
events is usually not asked to come back.
Yeah, right. No, I agree.
So
that was my impression, and that may not be what's happening in the session. I don't want to give the impression that I think that Buzzsprout's going to get up there and pitch Buzzsprout. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying just the optics of it.
Right. The optics is a little odd, but and also, there's a keynote speaker that's coming back that I don't know how much value gave last year too. It's but
are you talking about Mark Cuban?
Yeah.
And the whole fireside chat thing, which isn't a podcasting platform.
Right. So
just that.
I think and I have to put myself in someone else's shoes. They're under tremendous pressure.
Yeah, well, and I think that is promoted on the website as a sponsored session.
Oh, okay. So
it's being done up front.
So that's fine.
Paid for
session.
Right.
And I think that as long as people know that up front, I think it's good. And they're under pressure they got to fill their sponsor spots, and
right.
And people want something from that contribution. I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
I've been a sponsor of Podcast Movement in the past and did not at all expect any preferential treatment whatsoever in a session that I would be submitting,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm grateful when I'm given the opportunity to talk to people, and I make sure that I give the best performance I can, without, to educate.
Mm-hmm.
If they want to talk to me about Blueberry, they come to the booth. That's where we talk business. So,
I mean, my worry about bringing up these topics is that we're seen as kind of critical of people in the industry or questioning what people choose to do in the industry. But that, in a lot of ways, has been our role for many years in this medium, is to call out things that are maybe going on that may be a little out of kilter from people's perceptions.
And I wouldn't have known unless you brought it up, Rob. Because to be honest with you, I just kind of look through stuff, and I'm horrible with names anyway. It's just like I got a text or a tweet from somebody, and I'm like, oh, he works at Advertise Cast. I didn't realize who it was until I looked up their profile, and
well, if it's now okay to do that, I would love to pitch a whole session that has, Rob Walsh, me, Elsie, and Dave Jackson on it. I mean, it's that's kind of equivalent to what is going on here.
Yeah.
Right. So, and I ran it past the Lipson team, and they were like, "Hey, that's a great idea. We hadn't even thought about that." Kind of feedback that I had because of all of us wanting to go to these events and really focus on having topics that were not necessarily focused on Lipson per se.
Right.
Though I know that there's more and more economic pressure on everybody in the industry to make it more pitchy, and that's an unfortunate kind of outgrowth of economics coming into the medium. And
this shows where I pitch.
I mean,
we don't pitch, but we a little. We talk about stuff we've announced and acquisitions, and but we don't come over and buy product.
It's not like we talk about our pricing models.
No.
And what our storage,
No.
levels are, or what the advantages of being here or there are, if there are any. That's the
Well, we know there is. There's advantage to being a blueberry,
Yeah.
of course.
of course. So it's, but more and more, I do think that podcast hosting is a little bit commoditized.
Well, yeah, again, it's the. Well, I won't go into industry top secret information, but
There you go.
it's the proposition value. What do you bring to the table for the content creator? What's the
exactly?
Yeah.
What's the value? And each content creator has their own needs, right?
That's right. Yeah.
They perceive things, and at the end of the day, oftentimes it's who they trust, who they like to work with, because it is, from a technology perspective, oftentimes fairly commoditized.
Yeah.
But there are differences, like you're doing things with your platform that Lipson doesn't do, and
vice versa.
And I mean, there are oftentimes kind of smaller differences, but nonetheless, they're differences. So,
and going back to me kind of like bashing a little bit on the event organizers, we want you to have more regional events. I want to attend more regional events.
Just like Podstock.
Absolutely. I want to go to those events. I want to come. I want to support. And if I'm given the opportunity, I want to speak to your audience. I want to.
Right.
But I have a little meat on the bone to do that, because I have to go back to my board of directors. We have a sheet we fill out. It's an event planning sheet.
Mm-hmm.
And it's got a formula sheet in it. It talks about, what the end cost is, and we have everything we have everything laid out in there, and we look at that and we're like, ooh, or yep. And we vote on the value based upon who's attending. And again, it's important who's attending and all these things. So, so I think that I understand that some people are using events to build a business. You want to make a little money from your hard work, and you deserve to. But what is that? And if you're charging an entrance fee of the people that are going, then when you put a number on there that's $40,000 for the top sponsorship level for 300 people, that math don't work.
Right. And I think more and more there's increasing pressure just from the economic stuff we were talking earlier about people being able to attend these things and being able to afford to travel. And
that's why we want regional events to be successful.
Because travel right now, especially getting a flight to go anywhere, is extremely expensive. It's astronomical right now.
Yeah.
And that's going to hold, especially independent podcasters back from.
I'm worried about podcast
going.
movement attendance just based on airfares.
Well, that, and plus there is an uptick in COVID stuff too. So, that may be another hesitation point.
I just, I don't know. I'm at a point now where, I'm looking at the rest of the year, and I'm like trying to plan out where I'm going to go and what we can support. And there's not a lot of events. There's a few here and there through the end of the year, but come September 5th, I'm going to be like,
Yeah, there's not a whole lot.
Not a lot. There's a bunch of virtual events, and I'm not supporting virtual events.
Yeah.
Unless I'll support them by speaking.
Yeah, I'll probably be doing the NAB show in New York, but
are you guys exhibiting at that?
Mm-hmm.
So we are in Central Hall for NAB Vegas.
In Vegas, yeah.
Yep.
You did move. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not getting stuck in that hellhole west again.
Don't get us wrong. That's a nice facility over there in West.
It's out in the middle of the boondocks.
Yeah, it's a lot longer and difficult for people to get out there. That's the problem with it.
and the traffic was.
Yeah. I mean, I did that walk every day. I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
So anyway, I think we've covered our two topics today that we wanted to, and we're close to the end here. Here's, do you get any value today, everyone? Do you get any value? If you did, come over to newmediashow.com, drop us a penny, 10, 15, 20, $100,000. That'd be great. And as a reminder, the podcast award nominations are still going on. We still have a few people registering, just a trickle. There's 18 days left in nomination voting left. So there is a pitch. I run the podcast awards, full disclaimer on that. But if you want to reach out to me, I am Todd at Blueberry.com, at Geek News on Twitter. Rob, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I was just going to mention, if, Todd has been working hard on trying to, improve things with the show and things like that. We'd love your feedback on how you think we're doing. If you think that there's a couple of other areas you'd like to see improved, or if there's anything that we can do to be better at this, to better cater to your desires and your needs, we'd love to hear it. I know the most recent thing we worked on was my volume level, and I think, hopefully it's improved a little bit, so there wasn't such a big difference between Todd and I. So hopefully that was improved, but you're certainly welcome to send me an email anytime, robg@lipson.com, and I'm sure you can send an email to Todd as well, but I'm also on Twitter too, so feel free to post up there like we've been seeing. Listeners of this show have been posting quite a bit to Twitter and copying Todd and I, and we'll retweet those tweets. So keep that flowing, and I just appreciate you joining us each week, and I know Todd does as well.
Don't forget, we do have a Twitter account for this show, NMS Podcast. Rob, I actually gave Rob, you got the password now, so you got the keys to the car. You can go over there and.
Oh, you gave me the password?
Yeah, it's in your SMS. So check your phone.
Okay.
I sent it to you before the show today because I had to go through and change some passwords. So.
Got it.
Yeah. So we're going to try to go out today with I haven't tested this yet. We'll see if this actually works. You might see part of a weird screen. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But everyone, thanks for being here. Thanks for being part of the podcast. Thanks for watching. Get subscribed to the show, subscribe or follow. And we'll see you next time here on the New Media Show.